Hi, welcome. Glad you came by to meet Filbert the Lonely Flamingo. Filbert is a brand new flamingo. In fact, he's hardly even hatched. Filbert was supposed to be published by now, but we had a bit of a delay, like a lot of things that are happening right now. So Filbert isn't quite ready, but you're going to get a sneak preview of Filbert. And I'd like to thank all the kids at the Connaught School in Regina and their teachers who invited me there while Filbert was just a story like this with just words. And when the original drawings were first out, they got revised and we had new drawings. They really helped the book come along. So now I'm going to tell you the story of Filbert, the Lonely Flamingo. Filbert was a lonely flamingo. He didn't have one single friend in his flock. It started when he was a baby. Filbert stood on one leg like he was supposed to. Still, the other chicks teased Filbert because he was the only flamingo who stood on his left leg. Then all the chicks transformed from gray to the soft, salmony shade of chic flamingo pink. But Filbert kept turning pinker and pinker and pinker until his fluffy flamingo feathers were the pinkest pink of any flamingo in the flock. He was a fuchsia flamingo. Like all flamingos, Filbert loved to dance the flamingo flutter. Step, step, flutter, hop, beak left, beak right, step, step, flutter, hop. The flock practiced during the day, but Filbert adored dancing at night. Every evening he'd flamingo flutter until bump, he'd flutter right into a sleeping bird who'd knock over another sleeping bird, who'd knock over another sleeping bird, until flustered flamingos were falling everywhere, fussing at Filbert. Go away, we want to sleep. Filbert decided he didn't need any friends. He was tired of being laughed at. So even when Fern, the friendly flamingo who made his heart flutter, asked him to join her for some people watching at the park, he declined. People are boring, he said, and I sleep in the afternoons. He tucked his beak into his feathers and closed his eyes so he wouldn't have to see Fern leave. One afternoon, as Filbert was napping, he heard, "Honk, honk, watch out!" Filbert's head popped up, but it was too late. A plump gray Canada goose barreled into him from the sky. Filbert shook off his feathers and glared at the goose. "Where did you learn how to land?" "Oh, sorry," gasped the goose. "I'm Gabby. Been flying a long time. Wings gave out." "My wings never give out," Filbert snapped. "Sometimes I fly for an hour." "Honk! An hour," laughed Gabby. "I've been flying for weeks." "You have?" Filbert said. "I never knew anything was that far away." "Canada," honked Gabby. "Great place north of here, long way from Florida. Beautiful lakes, great food." "Is it easy to make friends there?" Filbert asked. "Sure," said Gabby. "Friendliest place in the world." "Sounds wonderful," said Filbert as he ran across the water, flapping his wings. "Maybe I can find a friend in Canada." "Honk!" shouted Gabby. "Wait, wait for spring." It was too late. Filbert was airborne and heading north at top speed. As he flew, Filbert watched the scenery below. Each new sight made him wonder, is this Canada? One afternoon, Filbert spotted some pink birds on the ground. He swooped down and landed in the middle of a flock of very shiny, short flamingos. "Hello," he said. "I'm Filbert from Florida." There was no reply. "Could you please tell me if this is Canada?" The little flamingos didn't utter a squawk. They didn't even move a feather. "Grumph," mumbled Filbert as his aching wings lifted him into the sky. "This can't be Canada. Canadians are friendly." The next morning, the wind turned icy and numbed Filbert from beak to toe. He thought about turning back, but he remembered how alone he felt in Florida. "I will find Canada. I will find Canada," Filbert chanted. As Filbert flew on, yellow, orange, and red trees blanketed the landscape below. "Oh, they're beautiful bird colors," he thought. and almost forgot how miserable he felt. But when the ground turned brown and then white, and the trees lost their leaves, Filbert started to cry. The trees are naked and cold, and that's how I'd look without my feathers. Filbert's tears turned to icicles. The icicles grew and grew and grew until Filbert started plummeting toward the ground. I will find Canada, screeched Filbert as he fell. I will find Canada. Filbert pumped his wings, but he was losing altitude. Then whoosh! He plastered a wing over his eyes and crashed into something soft and cold. Filbert's long, shaky legs wobbled in the freezing, fluffy stuff, and his twisty neck ached. Then a whistling whir of whiteness engulfed Filbert, the too pink fuchsia flamingo, and he couldn't move a feather. That lump of snow is a bird, Filbert heard a young girl say. The poor thing's freezing to death. It's pink, said a young girl as she gently brushed the snow off Filbert and put her coat around him. It's a flamingo. You're right, Andrea, a woman answered. It's a very lost flamingo. I'll phone the zoo. They'll take care of it. Oh, Mom, Andrea said, I can keep him in my room. Her mother laughed. Your room is no place for a flamingo. They like water and need lots of care. We could put a tub in the barn. I'll feed him and take care of him. I promise, Andrea pleaded. Her mother smiled. Okay. We can keep him here, but only until he's able to fly home. So Filbert spent the winter in a barn with some cows, chickens, and sheep. Every morning, Andrea dumped a bucket of greens and shrimp into his tub. She always giggled when Filbert stuck his head under the water and came up with a green face. Every evening, when Andrea went to say goodnight, Filbert was dancing and singing, and the other animals were complaining, moo, cluck, baa. Andrea loved dancing too. She galloped around the barn, flapping her arms, shouting, do the flamingo, step, step, flutter, hop, beak left, beak right, step, step, flutter, hop. One morning, Andrea said, it's time for you to get some fresh air. Knock, complained Filbert. He didn't want to go out. He remembered the cold. Then Andrea opened the door, and Filbert saw the white, cold stuff was gone and scurried into the yard. The trees were green and the sky was blue. Filbert soaked in the warmth and then decided to test his wings. As he flew circles in the sky, Andrea ran below him. Upon landing, he broke into the flamingo flutter, and Andrea twirled after him. Cawking and giggling, they danced all day. Step, step, flutter, hop. Filbert and Andrea were both thrilled to have a friend to dance with. That night, Andrea stroked Filbert's head. Then she kissed him, blurted, I love you, and ran out of the barn. The next day, Filbert couldn't wait to go outside. He flew to a lake, slurped some delectable greens, and napped in the sun. He was sound asleep when he heard, honk, honk, watch out. Filbert tried to duck, but it was too late. Saw you from the air, honked Gabby. Glad you made it. Filbert cocked his head. You mean this is Canada? Yep, honked the goose. Beautiful, isn't it? Filbert's eyes lit up. Yes, of course this is Canada. I made a friend, and the food is delicious. I found Canada. Look at you, a true Canadian flamingo, honked Gabby. I'm heading north. You want to come? Filbert glanced down at the left leg he was standing on. He'd practically forgotten he was different. Nope, I'm happy here. I think I'll be staying for a while. By the way, I told the flock you were headed for Canada, said Gabby. They were worried about you, especially Fern. Filbert's stomach fluttered and his neck nearly twisted itself in a knot. They were? Fern was? Yep, said Gabby. In the fall, I'll tell them you're fine. Filbert fluffed his fuchsia feathers and smiled with his whole beak. You don't have to. I'm going home, he said. Fern and the flock miss me. "Honk, wait," shouted Gabby. "You go north in the spring." But Filbert didn't hear. He was running across the water, flapping his wings with all his might. As Filbert gained altitude, he remembered his friend. Filbert twisted his neck and turned toward the farm. Andrea was in the yard. Filbert circled low. "It's time. Go home," she shouted. "Canada's no place for a flamingo." Filbert extended his legs for a landing and one more dance. Andrea ran toward him. "Cock, cock, go home!" Filbert's heart ached. "She wants me to leave," he cried. "I guess we're not friends." He straightened his neck and headed for the clouds. Andrea watched with tears in her eyes as Filbert became a tiny fuchsia speck in the sky and then disappeared. After weeks of flying, Filbert spotted a familiar lake with pink dots near the edge. "I'm home," he thought, and headed down fast. His wings were too tired to stop him. Filbert knocked over half the flock. Expecting angry flamingos, he squeezed his eyes shut and plugged his ears with his wings. When Filbert opened his eyes, he was engulfed in smiling beaks with warm, welcoming wings. "Welcome home, Filbert. Thank goodness you're safe. Life's been boring without you." Suddenly, he was eye to eye with Fern, who had just given him the biggest embrace of all. "I missed you so much," she said. Filbert was home, and he should have been happy, especially with Fern and the flock being so nice to him. But Filbert wasn't the same. He didn't do the flamingo flutter, not in the day and not even at night. Now, in the afternoons, Filbert flew to the park with Fern and the flock, but he stood alone and never laughed at the silly tricks that people did. Then, one day, he started a crazy dance. Filbert giggled as he pranced towards the shore. The flock gasped in horror. "Filbert, stop, stop, stay away from the people." Filbert didn't listen. He let a child pat his head. That made a few beaks flap. Then Filbert and Andrea started to dance. Step, step, flutter, hop, beak left, beak right. Wild laughter swept the flock. Filbert's heart soared with joy as he danced the flamingo flutter again with his friend. Finally, Andrea hugged Filbert and said, "I've got to go now. Mom says I can visit you again next year." Filbert sulked back to the flock. His head drooped. Then a gentle feather touched his cheek. "Filbert," said Fern, "I love the way you dance. Will you dance with me?" Filbert kissed Fern right on the beak, and the two of them flamingo fluttered off into the sunset. Thanks for stopping by. Filbert was written by me, Steve Wolfson. I live in Regina, Saskatchewan, and my sister Ellen Wolfson Valadares, who lives in South Florida. The lovely illustrations were created by Charity Russell, who lives in England, a real international collaboration.